So one of the, I think we believe, right? That's why we're here is to create a space, safe space within the team to allow everyone to grow their potential, right?
Yeah.
And then it's no matter of a gender anymore. It's just a matter of the willingness and the choices, like Renske
Yeah.
mentioned.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech. Thank you for listening. In this episode, you'll learn how to create a safe space in your team from Elena Zhebel and Renske Melchers-Vermolen. They're both a member of the Rabobank Women in Tech community. And before we go there, I'd like to share a bit of the backstory. In episode 35, Joanna Pemphilis already talked about the importance of creating inclusive spaces for women in tech and digital. And what I've learned from this episode and from other episodes of Women Disrupting Tech is that psychological safety plays a key role when it comes to getting more women to choose for tech. Now, at the time I was recording the episode with Joanna, I was also already talking to the Women in Tech team at Rabobank about doing an episode with them. Along the way, they suggested to do an episode about how to create a safe space in your team, and I figured that sounds like a plan. So in today's episode, Elena Zhebel and Renske Melchers-Vermolen are my guests to talk about creating a safe space in your team. Elena is a senior product manager analytics at Rabobank, and Renske is a tech lead at Rabobank. In this episode, we'll discover what it means to create a safe space in your team, how to maintain it as a safe space, and how a safe space in your team improves your team's overall performance and not just that of women. So please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Elena Zhebel and Renske Melchers-Vermolen. So welcome Elena and Renske. Good to have you. Question I always ask at the start of the podcast is how you got into your current job or your current position.
Yeah, so I've actually always worked in the area between business and IT. So already since university, I realized that the only way that IT implementations can be successful is if you manage all stakeholders properly. So after a
Mhm.
few years working as an IT business partner, I ended up in IT consultancy, which I did for quite a few years. And in those years, I actually changed from change training communication type roles in implementation projects towards managing teams, managing programs. Um, and there it becomes much more important to enable the team alongside managing the client. So my focus has been shifting more and more towards the internal team, knowledge transfer, things like engineering culture, but also inclusion and belonging. And 2 years ago, I was contacted by a recruiter who claimed that he had the perfect job for me, combining both people, IT, and strategic impact. And that has all come together now in my role as tech lead at Rabobank.
Okay. Yeah, it's always dangerous when people say that they have the perfect job for you, right?
Yes.
So Elena, how
Uh,
about you?
Sure. Well, thanks for invitation, Dirk Jan. I'm happy to be here. My story is a little bit different than Renske because my story starts with the love for mathematics. That's where it all started. When I was fascinated with the numbers and see how the equations can describe real world problems and was eager to solve them. So that's the reason I actually went to study PhD in applied mathematics. But
Mhm.
I decided not to stay in the academia, but apply my knowledge into the into the real world, into the industry. So that's how I ended up in the oil and gas. And there I spent a couple of years in various tech positions as a developer, various technical roles. And what I really enjoyed is to bring the tech into the business. And then I caught an entrepreneurial bug.
Okay.
And I went to build my own scientific software consultancy, where I really learned all the projects from the beginning and the end and the business side of the tech. And I learned how the technology can drive business forward. So, and then after like about 5 years ago, I actually made a leap. So I switched to finance industry and also moved to the management in the tech space.
Yeah.
And I was looking to have a bigger impact and especially integrating technology within the business strategy. So that's how I ended up at the Rabobank, being a senior product manager analytics within the rate team. And
Okay.
I'm focusing on the categorization for the payment transactions within the Rabobank.
Okay. And this is categorization across all the domains, so for wholesale and retail banking, or?
At the moment is for retail and also specifically for the Netherlands, but sky is the limit. We're looking around
Yeah.
how to expand.
Okay. So before we go into the actual topic of this podcast, so creating a safe space, I want to discuss two common myths. I actually borrowed those from a speech you did, Elena. And the first myth is that women can't lead.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think maybe just to clarify, where does it come from? I think it was an event at the Rabobank last year in December from the Women in Tech community. That's where I gave indeed the presentation, and I thought I have to debunk those two myths. And one of them, my personal opinions that leadership knows no gender, right? But where does it come from? I think it's coming from a perception that women are in general too nice, are nice. And there is a personal story connected to it. When I was a research geophysicist at Shell, some years ago, and I went to Oman for measurements of the for seismic measurements. So we were driving in the field, manager of the seismic crew, and we were talking about all kind of things because it was it was a desert and we had hours. We spent hours together in the car, and he was saying, "Well, Elena, you are not a management material. You are just too nice." And that stick to me, and I was like, why is it being nice doesn't mean managerial material? And I realized that it's a kindness might very often is mistaken by weakness. Yeah, but being kind doesn't make you weak, or it doesn't mean to be weak, such as to be aggressive doesn't make you strong. So that's why I really think I thought, well, this is something I really want to speak up and say, well, you can be kind and strong.
Yes, that's it's interesting how I think this is especially with men, by the way, how we think that you need to be strong and sort of, well, maybe not really aggressive in a negative sense, but in a positive way, you need to be assertive, let's say. And I see women all the time who are assertive, and if they show the same traits, and that's also one of the things that just popped into my mind. Actually, if women exhibit the same behavior as men, it works counterproductive. We've already heard that on other episodes of the podcast that so women, if they lead, they need to lead in their own way, which is with empathy, as I say. So that's a nice Nice point, Elena. So you're both leading teams. Renske also. What is your view on it, Renske?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because if I look around in the overall field of tech leads, all my colleagues, there are quite a lot of men. So I mean, yes, there is a difference. At the same time, especially at Rabobank, I don't feel like this myth is relevant anymore.
No.
What I do see is that women in particular, but also just people in general, don't always speak up. And then I'm not stating that people should be assertive in a way that doesn't fit them. But it does mean that if you want to go into a leadership position, I feel people need to be brave and be clear about the ambition and dare to lean into conversations. So I think looking at myself, I do believe to be an example to everyone I meet at Rabobank. Bring your authentic self to the office, and not just in the way of colorful dresses, but also in being honest about how you're actually doing or what you believe to be best to fulfill your role. And if we can convince people to look at it like that, then it goes far beyond women or men, and it's just people.
Yeah. About the balance of men and women, by the way, is that because what I noticed from personal experience is that in finance it's actually quite common to have a woman as a leader, whereas outside, let's say in the oil and gas industry, I don't know if it's that common. I just don't have the experience. But is it industry dependent also a bit?
I think maybe it's a skill dependent. I think finance and HR, they know more or they attract more women. That's also a possibility. Whereas in the tech space, it's just naturally less. There's less girls interested in the technical studies than the boys. That's something given, and that's something about to change. Right? We are going to schools. Even there's an initiative within the Rabobank going to schools and showing what we do, so that to inspire also girls to move into the technical positions.
Oh, that's good, because I think part of the lack of women in tech is due to the fact that we don't teach girls that tech is for them too.
Absolutely, yeah. And like you mentioned, Young, earlier, lack of role models, right? Yeah. And also, when I joined, once I joined the company, and there was there was only a team consisting only of guys for 10 years, and I was the first one, which was not a guy, and coming there with the high heels and making noise. After 1 week, someone was complaining. Well, can you please take a carpet when you walk and not go onto the tiles to make you are making too much noise. So, well, of course I followed, because I really respect and I want to also not to disturb so much. But a year later, another colleague joined. She was Italian. She has high heels much higher than mine. There was no issue anymore. It's also like when if you are there and you create, it's adapting, right? And it's all about getting used to each other.
And it's even showing others, right, that they are free to be themselves. Because what I do see in sort of more traditional organizations, also as a consultant, people confirm they confirmate, how do you say it?
Confirm.
To what they think is needed to be successful.
Yeah.
And if they believe they need to wear a blue suit and a black and a white shirt, or a black suit and a black tie, they will do that because they think it will make them successful.
Yeah.
And at some point during a very warm summer, I once got a comment like, "I'm so jealous of you because you as a woman can wear a nice dress to work, still be professional, but you're much more appropriately dressed for this warm weather."
Yeah.
So I had to laugh about it. But this guy actually switched to wearing much more colorful shoes at some point, because he was like, well, if she can wear color, I can also wear color. And suddenly you started to see a bit more personality in people in the teams, because why not, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's also a way of really showing the diversity of people that you have. Not to if you stay out of the white shirt, blue dress or black dress, black what is it suit, uh, normal things in wearing in office attire. Let's say. I want to switch to the second myth. Again, I want to start with Elena. The second myth is that technical experts are not cut out for leadership roles. And I have to say, for quite a long time, I actually did subscribe to this myth.
Right. Well, I'm glad you realize that it's a myth. And
Yeah.
luckily, you see, we also see the situation is changing. The
Mhm.
times are changing and stereotypes are fading out. But yeah, it's very common to assume a technical person to be just geeky, right? Solely focusing on the technical content
Yeah.
and be lacking emotional intelligence and things like that, right? So, and being technical myself, coming
Mhm.
from the very strong technical background, I actually take advantages from me being technical and focusing on the content. I was asking my team, because now I'm a product manager, product owner
Yeah.
at the Rabobank, and I was asking my team, what is advantage that I understand the technicalities of the
Mhm.
and all the nitty gritties of the product, and and I get an answer like, well, I, as a product owner, don't sell dreams because I know how much it takes to implement something and I know
Mhm.
how much effort. So I will not say, well, we will do it within the week.
Mhm.
So I don't make false promises. And on top of that is the advantage is that I speak the same language with my team.
Yeah.
We understand, and I think this is the advantage of being technical as a leader is to bring both worlds together, business and the technical, and speak the same language
Yeah.
in the same way. I think Renske, you also would like to add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe you already. I don't know if you checked the profile, but like one of my interests is also like preferred behavior of people. So
Uh-huh.
I'm a licensed disc trainer. I've done a lot of trainings, and then it's interesting to see that the transition towards leadership really depends on the development path that someone chooses to make. So to me, everyone can become a leader, but some people do have to put in a bit more conscious effort
Mhm.
to be noticed for a certain position.
Yeah.
So you already mentioned like the introverted people, um, uh, typically like the green and the blue colors, to put it like that.
Yeah.
But a crucial part of the theory is it's not who you are, right? So it's my preferred behavior, but you have an ability to adapt. And if you then look at the technical experts, they are typically more introverted. So in traditional leadership, it will sort of clash with the traditional view of the loud and
Yeah.
extroverted leader. But I've seen that people with an introverted profile can be the most harmonious leaders. So
Yeah, that's true.
that's a real skill.
Yeah.
However, if you have that skill, you need to realize it as a skill. I need to recognize it as a skill.
Mhm.
I need to see if there is a room for you in the organization that you are in. So it might be that you need to work on some skills, work with a coach, or practice on presentation skills to be heard.
Mhm.
But if it's really what you want and you hone those additional skills, I think everyone can grow towards becoming a leader. But it has to be a choice, and it will not just be handed to you.
No, absolutely not. No, but yes, I understand it. It requires conscious effort. But the
Yeah.
reason I actually subscribe, maybe also good to give that a bit of uh, background. The reason I used to subscribe to it because um, at ING where I worked, we had two types of trainings. One was a management training, so particularly for managers, and the other was for specialists, which is where I ended up being. And the difference was more in managerial styles that were expected at that time of people than that you couldn't be a leader because you were still expected to speak up, to do good presentations, to make your point clear, to have impact on whoever you were dealing with, but it was more to split into, okay, most technical people are really, as you said, Elena, specialists on what they do and like really incredibly good at it. And often these specialists are getting higher salaries than managers because there's just a lot of demand for it and not as much supply. But we had those trainings, but still we were expected as specialists also to show leadership skills. And at some point during those trainings, I discovered, oh, so this is not about. It's about if you want to be a manager, yes or no, and that's a choice, indeed, Renske. But it's not about leadership per se.
That's true, and actually, I do see that quite a lot of like the real hardcore experts, they at some point might try out managing people. And one of my most recent senior engineers that I hired actually came back from managing a team and just wanted to be a full-time engineer again. So that's also something you see quite a bit, and that's why I said it's a choice. So
yeah, it's definitely a choice. So I want to switch to safe spaces because that was originally the theme of the podcast. And so let's define it first. What does a safe space mean, and what does it not mean? Elena.
Yeah, I think you have a question with two parts, right? So let's focus on the thing what it means, and then we'll cover what it doesn't mean. So I think what it means to have a safe space is first and foremost is mutual respect. Yeah, so that all the team members have respect for it, and the respect is not just there, but also built on the open and transparent communication, right? So you feel safe to speak up and to approach the issues and have a conflict and resolve the conflict, right, within each other. So you should be able to feel free to do so, and I just list all of the things and then we'll decide where we go. I think the leading by example is a part of it, and that's also not only for a team lead or a product manager, or but also for senior people, right? Leading by example and co-creating safe space. Also, specifically, how do we treat mistakes? Right, to treat mistakes as a growth opportunities, as a development opportunities, and not as a punishment, right? And that's always what I tell to the people. You know, we're humans; we make mistakes, right? It's not that's something given. We are going to make mistake one at a time. The trick is how to react, how to deal with the mistake after you made it, right? And that's what we will judge you on, right? Not on the fact that you made a mistake. And I think the fourth one is empowerment. In the safe space, you also feel empowered. You feel ownership of, and you are able to take decisions and lead initiatives. This is something. These are the four components of the safe space.
Okay, so I want to touch a bit on the co-creation because I quite like that. So it's not just a manager who needs to do it, right? It's also people in the team that you're leading. Is that right, Renske?
Yes, I believe that if you're talking about a safe space, you can't purely point towards a manager. It's much more about the team and how the collaboration goes within the team. So to me, I mean, Elena mentioned the transparent communication. And if you look at that transparency, there is, a two-way street that is going there. You have the mutual respect. You have a certain sense of vulnerability. For me as a manager to my teams, but with 5 teams, I'm not able to influence each team individually as much as I would like. So, but within those teams, I do give people at least the advice, for example, to give more feedback to each other as part of that open communication, so that as a team, give each other feedback, not just on the points for improvement and solving conflicts, but also give compliments and mention something that you appreciate to your colleague. So that if we communicate clearly on it when it's a good time, then at some point, if we run into a bit of a
Headwind.
bump in the road, you can work together in that group because everyone feels safer to keep
How,
sharing.
how do you, for lack of a better word, train this? How do you embed this behavior into a team?
It's something I've been working on in the past year. It depends a little bit, obviously, on the background of people. So if people, for example, have spent a few years in consultancy, it is sort of already, it's already part of who they are. People that are not used to feedback often think of it as a bad thing. So just by inviting them to also give feedback and to ask them, specifically ask them about things that went well, and ask them, have you ever told your colleague about this? Then you start to see sort of light bulb moments popping up. And that's a slow process because it is actually a cultural change. It's a behavioral change. And I won't change that overnight. But I think we are moving in the right direction in the teams. And with that, I do have to say I use a lot of help from my Scrum Masters as well, because they are really day-to-day involved in each team, much more than me.
Oh, okay. So you actually also solicit help for that.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I can't do it by myself. With around 50 people, as you said, you can't put it all on the shoulders of the manager because then I will fail horribly.
Yeah.
And in our team is very similar. So we do have a Scrum Master, and there's one tip to create this open communication and feedback culture is to do retrospectives. So we work in the sprints, which is 2 weeks of period where we decide for a goal for a sprint, and then at the end of every sprint we assess not only did we achieve what we wanted, but also how did we work. What was the way of working? Is there a way we can improve? What went well? Did the communication went well, or is there something we can improve? And I think doing it as a team exercise helps a lot to assess and also give compliments and give also feedback. And treat it as a continuous learning process and not something. Oh, it's once a year I get a performance feedback, right?
Yeah, it's not your one-time a year appraisal meeting. No. But is it also about really making sure that people see mistakes as a learning opportunity as opposed to something they did wrong?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in the most successful teams, you see that, and so therefore also safe spaces, there is that room for growth. And it's very interesting to see then that, for example, a senior developer will hold back on taking up the stories that they know they're good at to give room to a junior developer to take that complicated story, knowing that they will most likely make mistakes. It will take a bit longer. And at the same time, because they do this in those teams, the juniors also feel comfortable to ask then for help from the seniors. So by peer programming, by having these sparring sessions, and then acknowledging even seniors that they have learned from the insights from anyone else in the team, and so not seeing themselves as the best, but the team as a whole as the best, and that's great.
It's also an interesting perspective then, because especially the seniors, they give up space, and I can imagine that what it does also is that you open yourself up for your own blind spots. So you actually overall long term improve the quality of your product because you have other people looking at it from probably a different angle. I see two ladies nodding.
No, absolutely.
Yes, audio, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. That's also what we observe is that, to share, to give ownership. If you allow person to take the ownership and make decision, and of course there should be also a space to discuss the decision and make mistakes, right? Sometimes, but that's a learning process, right? And that's consider it as a learning process and not as something extraordinary. I think that does work the best. And I also wanted to mention that what it does not mean to have a safe space is that, because it's connected, is tolerance for poor performance or tolerance for low standards, right? And this is something, if you have a safe space, it doesn't mean that you can be sloppy, right? Or it doesn't mean that you should avoid conflict at any cost, right? It's opposite, that it's okay that there is a conflict and there is some situations that you need to treat a little bit differently, but it's okay. You can be open about it.
Yeah, is it also a way to get people used to things like feedback and, well, maybe also negative input? I always see it as a bit of learning to box, because when you learn to box, you get hits. There's no way to avoid them, because at some point your guards will go down. So then someone will, well, maybe not punch you in the face, but at least, but by getting those feedback points, to call them like that, you also get used to, like, okay, this is what I need to do to keep my performance up.
It's interesting how you mention this. I'm sorry, Elena.
No, go ahead, Renske.
I never heard this example of the boxing, but actually that works perfectly, because it's interesting. If you would choose, I want to learn boxing, part of it is being hit. If you choose to go into the workplace, and either as an expert or as managing people, you will do something that other people won't like. And I think the main difference there, again, it's two-way. People need to learn how to give feedback, because the same with boxing. I guess if you hit someone wrong, you can break their arm, but it will probably still leave a bruise, right? If you do it right. And at the same time, it is also about not taking it personal.
Yes.
And I think, you get into the ring, you will get hit. What I do have seen happen in the past, and more to women than to men, is that sometimes we identify ourselves so much with the role and with the work that we do, because we're really proud of it, that if you then get feedback that perhaps you could have done something different, people take it so personal that it impacts their view of themselves. While you are in the ring, and once you get out of it and you go home to your family or to your friends, that's not the same environment. So it's okay to get hit every once in a while, because it's part of the process, and it's not that the person across from you really wants to hurt you.
No, they just want to win the boxing match. That's all.
Yeah, obviously we all want that.
Elena. I was thinking it's a very interesting perspective, and I'm not sure I completely agree with that. I see what you're trying to say, Renske, that you do need to find out how to work with other people, right? Who are have a different style, different preferences. But I don't think. I think that because the boxing match is about competition, right? And I think by having a safe space, I think the competition, there should not be a competition between team members. There should be a competition against yourself, right? You should be able to compete with yourself, and try to improve, compare yourself to the 6 months ago, to 1 year ago. But I think to compare yourself to the peers might be a recipe for disaster, right? Because then there will be always moving goals which you cannot achieve. I don't say that you should not be inspired by others. If you see a senior really showing behavior, that something should inspire, right? And then you can take action to do to grow in this direction. But I think given the I really want to challenge the competition within the safe space.
I understand how you're saying it, and I think indeed to add to that, what I was just trying to say, I was thinking in the analogy of the boxing training, right? So you choose to get in the ring to get better, and you do that against someone else that also likes to spar, so to say.
Yeah.
And when I talk about winning, it is indeed winning against myself, so my own insecurities, so to say, and that is the part that you should overcome. But the insecurities are actually what can take you down very easily if you let those, even the practice match, take you give you the bruises, so to say.
Absolutely. If you measure yourself by the bruises, not by the long-term improvement of getting less hits,
exactly,
then you're in for a harsh. You're looking at yourself in a much harsher way than is necessary, I think. Um, uh, we've already talked a bit about it, but what are the benefits of creating a safe space for the organization, but especially for the teams that you create the safe spaces for? Elena.
I think there are a bunch of benefits, and I think I want to start that the team with in the safe space also taking ownership, delivering, taking decisions on their own, checking it with the colleagues, peer programming and collaborating together also lead to the high performance team. Right, it's also improvement of performance. So you can together we can go further. Right, alone you can go faster, and together we can go further. It also leads to a satisfaction of the work you've done as a part of something bigger.
Yeah.
Right. So we already touched on it, like how to develop and grow each other within the team. Right. There is if there is a free space, you can explore. You can allow to make mistakes and learn from them. Right. And you can work or learn from others. Right.
What I also hear you say is that it allows for discovery of new things then.
Yeah, because it creates the room for it. Yeah, you feel safe to experiment, not only survive. If we will think about Maslow's pyramid, right, and all the needs. So this is the if it's there is no survival. Right, you don't have to survive. You don't have to compete. You can. There is a room for discovery.
Yeah, people in the team feel like they belong, and that it's okay to make those mistakes. It's okay to speak up if they want to perhaps try out some different stories that they wouldn't typically develop. And that's those are the most successful teams as well, because people feel safe.
So there's high performance, there's time and space for discovery, and
satisfaction of the work together. And
so it's growth for both the team and the individual. I think that's
growth. Sorry, it slipped, but yes, that's the third part I wanted to include in the summary.
Yeah, and the anecdote from my team is that we have a senior engineers now. We have and we have some. Our project is very heavy data science oriented and also engineering, heavy engineering. So we have both skills present in the team, and we have senior engineers who is also taking up data science projects. So as a joke, we call them, "Oh, we have a junior data scientist now."
Yeah.
So it also allows to explore other skills within the safe space.
And that's where the personal growth comes in, I guess. And that's also how you build ultimately, I think, high-performing organizations, because ultimately people will discover the skill that makes them tick and perform better.
Yeah.
So we've talked about creating safe spaces. How do you keep them safe, Renske?
By keeping it a topic of conversation. So it's not something you can have a training on and then assume
Yeah,
it
just
will magically be
it's not
okay.
a set it and forget it thing.
Exactly. No, it's something that the team needs to keep working on. Also, obviously, because there are always shifts in teams.
Yeah.
But as soon as the team sort of becomes too comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you get into the area of assumption, and we all know that she's a mother, so
Yeah.
that's what you want to stay away from. So we need to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
And I agree with Renske. It's also like if we look at the micro tips, right? Like what, for example, we did within our team. So keep one-on-ones regularly, right, with the team member. Keep talking, celebrate life events together, birthdays together. We did new joiners onboarding very thorough thought onboarding process.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage peer programming. But also celebrate the difference. This is something we did actually shared our personalities within the team.
Uh-huh.
And we did the free test. It's 16 personalities. I think, Renske, you mentioned disc for colors, right? I think that would be
Yeah.
even better, but we just went with the free version of it. And
Yeah.
the purpose of it, not to dive into the psychology or this type of things, but the goal of it to realize the differences of approach. Like we mentioned, introvert versus extrovert, right?
Mm-hmm.
For introvert, at the beginning of the day, it's the glass full, right? And then with every meeting, it shrinks. And for
Mm-hmm.
extrovert, the glass at the beginning of the day is empty. And with every
Yeah.
meeting, it gets filled up, right?
Yeah.
So how do you find the balance and approach and also to see where the people come from? So, and coming back to Renske's, not take it personal, right?
Yeah.
If there is a difference in approach or personality or way of working, it doesn't mean it's against you, right, or
No.
against your beliefs. It's just the
Yeah.
difference,
Yeah.
different approach,
It's just what it is, a difference.
different
Exactly.
preference. Yeah.
So, Renske, I had a question for you about this. Do you also hire specifically? I mean, you hire for specific roles, of course, but also
Yeah.
do you look at, okay, the person who left had a certain, I'm just going to call it a psychological makeup profile. So I want to hire someone who is, let's say, similar. Not the same. It's not possible to hire the same person back again, but someone similar. Do you actually do it? Take it into account in your hiring?
Actually, not that much. I am aware of unconscious bias.
Hmm.
So typically, especially if we look at like hiring a new engineer, we had hundreds of responses. There are some basic filters, and then also the team looks at it, etc.
Hmm.
And from my side, I typically look at the layout of a team. So I always want a very senior person in the team, a meteor, and preferably also a junior, because I believe
Hmm.
seniors should be able to take the knowledge transfer, etc.
Yeah.
And then I do want to prevent the team getting very comfortable in only selecting those engineers that look like them, so that you might end up with a team with very similar personalities. So I don't mind if it's if it's a bit
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
But typically, yeah, I do, especially when it comes to the engineers in the squad, I do lean very heavily on the other engineers and the architect, to really see, will the person also fit? Because for a year or two, they will have to work very intensively together. And then
Hmm.
from my angle, I much more look at, do they fit within Rabobank as a whole? So if
Yeah.
they become internal, will they stay with us for a long time, and do they fit? And then I think the only main behavior preference that I look for
Hmm.
is if people have a growth mindset. If they're willing to learn, I don't care how different they are.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, as Elena said, not take it personally. It's open for others' opinions.
Yeah.
And then we're okay. I mean, beside the fact that obviously they need to have the skills, but that's a
I mean,
given.
it starts with the skills, of course, but
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I may add, we're also looking for in these interviews. We're also looking: do we understand each other? If I explain something, does this person understand what I'm talking about, or do I understand what the other person means? Right. So I think communication fit. Right. It's also something we take into account.
Yeah, especially looking at the Dutch culture.
Uh-huh.
I always, especially with people that come from outside of Europe, I always ask the question like, are you aware of the Dutch working culture? And that people can be very direct.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Although that's a bias or a filter that we have of ourselves, that we're really direct, which we're not. That's a myth I can bust right now. If you compare it
Okay,
to,
that's
for instance,
interesting. I did get that feedback sometimes.
I worked with Americans. They are much more direct than we are, or they can be. And even English people can be very direct if you put them in the right setting. Although they are known to be a bit more, let's say, at a distance.
Yeah, but if you would take the Asian culture or Middle East, they are much more softer in the approach, how to word things.
They have to get used to the, let's say, the Dutch way of giving feedback, which is blunt.
And speaking up when they're part of a team. I think that's a very important one. So that's what I mean with direct. You shouldn't just let yourself be pushed out of the way because someone else is talking louder. And just not like, okay, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone deserves to be heard in a team.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful place to move to the one of the last questions I had for you. You're both part of the Women in Tech Rabobank community. I was wondering, how does that help you as a person and as a leader?
I think that's very connected what you said earlier, Dirk-Jan, is that role models, right? That we are not aliens. We are not alone. There's a bunch of other women doing the same thing, and that's where what the community is about, right? To share experience and to see best practices and to see how we can learn from each other.
Sharing those experiences is the nicest because we have like these monthly coffee talks virtual with a certain topic that we discuss.
Okay,
and cool. It's really nice to then sometimes learn I'm not alone in this. And other times it also is very nice to hear that I am alone in a certain experience, so that knowing that an experience is not normal can be also very valuable, so that we can listen and learn from each other, get tips, sometimes be angry together. And then, okay, and what can we do to not have this situation in the future? So I think this community really collaborates to a new generation of leadership and empowering women in the bank on all levels.
But it's also good to indeed hear that some situations or things that happen are not normal.
Yes,
that you are alone in this, or it's bad to hear that you're alone in it, but it's also good to hear that people confirm that maybe it's as a consequence it's not okay.
Exactly.
So
maybe also good to mention that their Women in Tech for Rabobank is also open for outside. Maybe we'll share a link afterwards. There is a blog posts posted regularly and can be seen from. It's not only for Rabobank, but for everyone.
Okay, well that is very good to include in the show notes. So I'll definitely take you up on that. Second to last question. I have an arrangement with Jacqueline van de Ende. She's one of the co-founders of Carbon Equity. And I think it was episode 4 or 5, where she said that gender should be a non-issue in 10 years from that point, so 2032. And she also told me that my podcast should be obsolete by then. And I was wondering if you could give me some advice how to get there.
Right. I think the topic of this podcast speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
So one of the I think we believe, right? That's why we're here, is to create a space, safe space within the team, to allow everyone to grow their potential, right?
Yeah.
And then it's no matter of a gender anymore. It's just a matter of the willingness and the choices, like Renske mentioned. Yeah. Personal choices.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the time might already be right to change this title from Women Disrupting Tech to People Disrupting Tech. Because we talk about the gender gap indeed because it's very visible. But if we look at every individual, we have the different backgrounds, we have our unique experiences, we have those different preferred behaviors.
Yeah.
And I mean, especially within tech, we go all the way from the so-called social butterflies to the silent and exceptionally smart flies on the wall. And we all have quirky habits. So we're all a bit weird. We all have our distinctive lives on views on life and work and ambition.
Yeah.
So if we look at the end goal, to me, yes, disrupting tech to get this new way of working together.
Yeah.
And then it should not be about adjusting our behavior to what we think will be successful at work, but it should be about knowing that people can be successful by being themselves, and that there is a space for everyone to disrupt tech.
That is a beautiful place to close. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation with both of you. Final question. Where can people connect with you and learn more about Rabobank and the Women in Tech initiative that you have?
LinkedIn, and Elena has a link.
Yeah, please feel free to look up and connect on LinkedIn, and we will provide the links to the Rabobank and the Women in Tech community as well.
Good. We'll include those in the show notes. So once again, thank you very much, both of you, Renske and Elena, for being my guest. Really enjoyed having you. Really enjoyed the conversation. And listeners, thank you very much for listening. Well, that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you for listening. Renske, Elena, and I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation about creating a safe space in your team as much as we did. You can learn more about Elena and Renske and connect with them via the links in the show notes. And in those same show notes, you can also find the link to the Rabobank Women in Tech community. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog. There you can also find the other episodes of the podcast, like the one with Joanna Pamphilis that I mentioned in the intro. And the website also has blog posts on topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in tech. Now, if you like the podcast and if you'd like to support it, there are 3 ways to do this. If you're following the Women Disrupting Tech podcast on Spotify, Apple, or Goodpods, would you consider giving the show a rating or a review? That way, you help other people discover the podcast. Another way to support the podcast and to contribute to more diversity in tech is sharing the podcast with friends, family, and co-workers. This way, you give guests like Elena and Renske the platform they need to make this podcast obsolete by 2032. And if you'd like to be among a select group of people who are the first to hear about new podcast episodes, please consider becoming a member of the Women Disrupting Tech community. To join, simply enter your best email address in the box at the bottom of the show notes. Finally, you can connect with me via the website or via LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, just look up my name and you'll find me. Once again, thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.